Welcome to 8.12's Math Moment. Today in 5th grade, students looked at length, area, and volume as units of measurements and had to decipher between the three of them. Looking at example 1, it asks us if we are going to measure the length, the area, or the volume. A really important part of this question is to make sure that students are thinking about that object or the item that is described and visualizing it and then thinking, okay, am I going to just find the length? Am I going to need to find the area, everything inside, or the volume? Am I going to find everything as a three-dimensional space? So let's go ahead and look at this very first one. How far it is from the light switch to the ceiling. Well, when I think about light switch to ceiling, I know I'm just going to go one direction, so I'm going to use length in this case. How much dirt is in a flower box? Well, if I'm visualizing a flower box, I know that dirt has to go inside, and I'm going to figure out how much is going to be inside there. I'm going to need to use volume for that one. And how much paint is needed to cover a wall? This is a big key word right here, cover. Cover tells me I'm going to go all over something, which is going to tell me I'm going to use area. The second part of this question, students were asked to think about, does the problem require area, length, or does it require volume? So as we look at this word problem, students need to start thinking about which of these three things is it required, are they asking them to figure out? A dresser is 5 2/5 feet tall, 2 2/7 feet wide, and 2 1/4 feet deep. How much space does the dresser take up? Well, I see that I have 3 dimensions, and so most of the time 3 dimensions is going to indicate volume, length times width times height, but I'm just going to make sure that I don't have extra information here that's trying to throw me off. When the question asks how much space does the dresser take up, that's going to go ahead and cue me into that I do need to find volume. So I'm going to write down length times width times height. Now to solve that, what I'm going to do is I'm going to write my 5 2/5 times my 2 2/7 times my 2 1/4. Now students are going to know from previous lessons that we cannot multiply mixed numbers, we have to change them into improper fractions. So I'm going to go ahead and do that down here. I know 5 times 5 is 25, plus 2 more is 27, so I've got 27 over 5 times 2 times 7 is 14, plus 2 more is 16. I've got 16 sevenths times 2 times 4 is 8, plus 1 more is 9. I've got 9 fourths. Now students will also know that you cannot multiply 3 numbers together, so you have to make it into smaller groups. I'm going to use some parentheses to indicate what I'm going to multiply. I'm going to go ahead and take these first 2 numbers, my 27 fifths and my 16 sevenths, and multiply those 2 together. I know for the bottom, that's a fact I already know, 5 times 7 is 35, so I'm going to go ahead and write that down. I need to figure out what 27 times 16 is. So 27 times 16. 27 times 16. 6 times 7 is 42. Carry my 4. 2 times 6 is 12, plus 4 more is going to be 16. Put my 0 down, and I'm going to multiply. My 7 times 1 is 7. My 2 times 1 is 2. I've got 2, 13, carry my 1 for 4. I've got 432. I'm going to go ahead and write that down. I take this number times 9 fourths. All right, I'm going to go ahead and erase this. Normally I wouldn't encourage students to do that, but since I'm kind of running low on space, I'm going to do that for this problem. 35 times 4, I'm going to do that on the bottom. It's one of my easier problems. 35 times 4 is going to be 20. And then I've got 4 times 3, which is 12, plus 2 more is 14. So I've got 140 on the bottom. And then I need to take 432 times 9. I'm going to go ahead and write that over here. 432 times 9. 2 times 9 is 18. Carry my 1. 27 plus 1 more is 28. 9 times 4 is 36 plus 2 more is 38. So I've got 3,888 over 40. Now, as students are going to know, we have an improper fraction, which we're going to need to go ahead and divide. Again, I'm going to go ahead and erase. I'm not going to encourage students to just on their work, but I'm going to need more room to go ahead and finish this problem. So I need to figure out, when I take my 3,888 divided by 140, how many 140s there are in this problem. All right, when I look at this problem, I begin to think, okay, can 140 go into 3? It can't. It cannot go into 38. But can it go into 388? I know that it can. I know it's not going to be a gigantic number, so I'm going to start with my guess and check being kind of low. I'm going to do guess and check times 2 to start off. When I do that, I get 280. Okay, I know I'm about 100 off, so I'm going to try 140 times 3, which is going to give me an answer of 12. Carry my 1, I've got 420. So I've gone slightly over in this case. So then I'm going to go ahead and just use my 2. So 2 times 140 is going to be my 280. When I subtract, I have 8, 0, 1. I need to go ahead and bring down my last 0. I need to figure out how many 140s are there in 1,080. Again, I need to use my good math reasoning to figure out, okay, I'm pretty far away with my 2, so I'm going to want to hop up quite a bit further to figure out where I could go. I'm going to definitely start off with probably a guess and check of around 140 times 8, just to see where I'm going to be at for this problem. 0 times 8 is 0. 4 times 8 is going to be 32, so I'm going to put my 2 down, carry my 3. 1 times 8 is 8, plus 3 more is 11. So I'm slightly over. I'm not a large amount over, but I definitely know I need to go down a little bit. So I'm going to take 140 times 7. 0 times 7 is 0. 4 times 8 is 28. Put my 8 down, carry my 2. 7 times 1 is 7, plus 2 more is 9. So I've got 980. I'm going to go ahead and write down my 7. 7 times 140 is 980. When I subtract, I've got 100 left. So I know that this is as close as I can get. I've got 27 over 100 over 140. I'm slightly off of my page, so I'm going to rewrite that down here. 27 over 100 over 140. Again, very large numbers that we're going to need to reduce. I know these both can be reduced by 10. So I'm going to divide by 10, which is going to give me 10 and 14. Again, those can be reduced. I'm going to reduce those by 2's, which is going to give me 5/7. A very extensive problem for a final answer that is going to take up 27 and 5/7 feet cubed. Now, like I said, this is a pretty lengthy problem. There was a lot of things involved. We had to convert our mixed numbers into improper fractions, and we had to multiply some large numbers, and then we had to then divide some large numbers as well. One thing that students could have looked at, if your student is familiar with that, they could have looked at cross-reducing if appropriate. There's a few times in here where we could have cross-reduced to make those numbers smaller, to make the division a little bit easier. If you have any questions about 8.12, make sure you see your math teacher.